Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. This is Tom Dutta, your host, and we're excited to bring a guest to you today. I think you're going to be blown away by this guest's background and his story. First of all, I want to say that we're live streaming. It's the next generation of podcasting. So give it a like, to also the subscribe button there for the YouTube channel so we can honor this show when it comes out and do more of them. We're across LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter today. And I want to tell you that there's something special about this interview before I bring him in from the green room, because I don't get butterflies very often before doing a show, but I had to work really hard on my deep breathing before I bring this person out. And I'm going to talk about why that is on the show. But everybody, let's bring him on the screen and welcome to the show. If he's there, I see there he is. CLINT ARTHUR. I just finished talking about my anxiety and stress, and he walked away from the. I love it, man. How you doing? Welcome to the show, CLINT.
Buenos dias. ¿Cómo está?
Yeah, I love it. I want to just say to the audience, first of all, why we met, and it was really I was introduced to you, and there was this book that came about. We're going to talk a lot about that today, The Wisdom of the Men. And I saw the front cover, and I got to tell you that when I first looked at it, I was a little skeptical about doing the interview. And I remember I said that to you. Is this going to be a show about how great we are? And then totally the opposite, CLINT. When I read the book, dude, every thread in that book was, I'm going like, that's my story. That's my story. And I think that's why we want to get into that. So welcome to the show. You are a celebrity entrepreneur and so much more than that. First of all, tell us a bit about what a celebrity entrepreneur is and why you do what you do.
Well, I don't want to say that first. What I want to say first is you said every thread in the book was your story. And, I really feel like I am every man. I'm just a regular guy. And that's taking me into what celebrity entrepreneurship is. Celebrity entrepreneurship is a person who is an author, a speaker, a coach, a consultant, advisor, an expert of any kind. There's a lot of doctors and lawyers and financial advisors and cybersecurity experts and anybody who ostensibly sells what you do or how you service people. Your number one job is to position yourself as somebody special in the eyes of your customers and prospects. It's not, your number one job is not doing the law pages that you write. Your number one job is not typing on keyboards. Your number one job is marketing who you are to the other people so that they can be excited to pay you a lot of money, because that's the best way to get people great results, is to have them be excited to pay you a lot of money for what you're going to do for them. Because otherwise, probably they're not going to pay you. And second, they're not going to do what you tell them to do if they're not really excited to work with you. So celebrity entrepreneurship is designed to handle that. So what does that mean? Well, I'm certainly not famous. Tony Robbins is the best example of a celebrity entrepreneur. And probably a lot of the listeners watching this show think that Tony Robbins is super famous, but I could show you video after video after video of people saying, Tony who? Here's some of them right here.
Anybody here know who Tony Robbins is? Do you? No? Do you know who he is? Do you know who Tony Robbins is? No? How about you? You know who he is? Nobody.
Okay, and you might say, well, it's the demographic or whatever. Well, yeah. It's the target market. Your target market needs to think that you are as special to them as Tony Robbins is to us, the 0.25% of all people in America who are aspirational, who are trying to make themselves better, who do personal development, go to seminars, do self-help work. We think Tony Robbins is special, but nobody else knows who he is. I was at a dinner party the other night, and there were 5 people sitting at the table besides me and my wife. And the girl who was like, she was like 40, she thought she had heard of him. The father, he had heard of him. The 2 mothers that were there, they were 70-year-old women. They had never heard of him. Okay. Never, like, who are you talking about? That's celebrity entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's awesome. Listen, I'm going to have some fun with you here, Clint. I'm going to put something on the screen for a minute. We're going to take a look at it. So I'm going to put it up and then I'm just going to read it. So usually I'll do this later in the show, but Clint's got a new book out. I read it. I gave it a 5-star review. I posted it. I actually listened to the audiobook, Clint, and I went deep into this. So let's put this up. We're going to honor you. Here you go. All right. I like this book for its entertaining storytelling, narrative style. Loved it for its treasure trove of resources. Was pleasantly surprised at the author's voiceover prowess. What made the book relatable was the author's brilliant balance of sharing his stories of adversity and growth. I wasn't sure at first how I would feel immersed in a book about celebrity entrepreneurs, but quickly I realized the timing is perfect. The blueprint, resources, bonus materials are invaluable for anyone looking to turn their story into celebrity entrepreneur status. This is not a book about ego. It's a book about finding the meaning of one's story, growing past limiting beliefs, executing a business strategy to serve people with that story. Life's most fulfilling moments for me have been in service to others, and I highly recommend this book. So congratulations, everybody. You can find that on Audible. And listen, I'm going to shout out, when an author's work gets known, it's because you read the book, but go and post a review so that others can see it. So I want to talk for a minute, Clint, before you get back into your story. I was kind of riffing up front about how I was skeptical about when I saw the cover of the book. And I'll tell you why. It's because for a long time in my life, I didn't realize I have this monkey or reptilian brain, they call it. It was made for survival. It wasn't made for happiness and joy. And for far too long, I didn't realize that I didn't really know who I was. In fact, what I was listening to was things that were put in me that my brain believed through a lifetime. So for example, 10 years ago, if I had you come across my desk, I'd be shaking my boots going like, I'm not worthy of interviewing this guy. He's better than me, blah, blah, blah. When I finally learned that if I take that rational side of the brain that, we get when we mature, I started looking at your book and go, wait a minute. When I read deep into it, everybody, I saw not only stories and what Clint was trying to teach me, but I saw adversity. He talked about the things that he struggled with in life. He talked about being a taxi driver and getting to where he is. He talked about not just using other people's profiles to be better, which is what I used to do. He talked about having his story and getting it out there through a network of people that he had met. And that's when I realized, Clint, that this book is a home run. So we're gonna just give you a little celebration there. There it is, some fireworks for Clint's book.
Thank you.
So I have the book on Audible. I'm going to pull up a little clip from it in a minute. But why did you write this book?
When I was a little kid, and first of all, I want you to know, you said I talk about being a taxi driver. Being a taxi driver was something that I kept secret for 16 years. I went and graduated from the Wharton Business School, and all of my fraternity brothers, while I was chasing the Hollywood dream for 13 years and driving a taxi to survive, they were all working on Wall Street, making millions and billions with a B. I know of at least 3 of my fraternity brothers who are my close friends, my age, who are billionaires. And they made it themselves. They didn't inherit it. Although everybody had great backgrounds except for me. I was a middle-class kid I grew up in New York City, and I went to public schools in New York City where I met some amazing people, unbelievable connections of people that I met. And we'll talk about them in this interview. But one of them was a man named Frank Mccourt. And Frank Mccourt taught creative writing in my high school. He was just a guy who'd show up in class wearing corduroy pants and a plaid shirt and a jacket with patches on the elbows. And he would be very tired and had snaggly teeth. And he would tell us stories about when he was growing up in Ireland and the poverty that he and his family endured. And those stories went on to become his memoir, Angela's Ashes, which won the Pulitzer Prize in 1997. And that guy inspired all of us. I mean, even before he won the Pulitzer Prize, he had inspired us to want to be writers. But when he won the Pulitzer Prize, that's when I said to myself, well, if he could do it, I could be a great writer too. And I've been writing, and I was so deluded. If I had known it was going to take me 40 years to get to where I am now, I don't know that I would have done it, because 40 years is a damn long time to be working as a writer and having, nobody appreciate you or say nice things about you. When I was in Hollywood, all I would hear while I was writing my 30 feature film screenplays on spec, which means you write them hoping to sell them. 30 of them was, you're terrible, you suck, this is never going to be anything, you're too old, your writing is terrible. It was nothing positive at all. And that's why I was driving a taxi on New Year's Eve of the millennium, when I had these two guys in the back seat of my cab, and I'm listening in as I'm driving them to a party in the Hollywood Hills. And one guy goes, hey man, did you hear about Mr. Carrera? They made him the last partner right before the Goldman Sachs IPO, and he cashed out $1 gazillion. And I'm like, you guys talking about Chris Carrera? How do you know Mr. Carrera? Chris Carrera was a pledge in my fraternity. He wasn't one of the B billionaires, but he just made $1 gazillion. And on that night, I go home to my little boat on Marina Del Rey, and I pull out my wad of cash out of my sock. I used to hide it there so I wouldn't get robbed. And I'm counting it up, $513. I was special like Chris Carrera. What was he doing tonight, partying at the Rainbow Room? And that's when I said, I can't keep throwing my life away on a dream that ain't never gonna happen. And that's when I quit writing for the second time. That was the second time in my life that I quit writing for many years. I did not write another word until 2009. 8 years. I'm a writer. And why did I write this book? I wrote this book because I am a writer, and I have been inspired to be great by Frank Mccourt and my other mentors. My college roommate was a kid named Evan Copelson. His father produced a little movie called Porky's. That I know. That was, if you remember that one, that was the number 5 top grossing movie.
I remember it well.
And then after that, he produced a little movie called Platoon, which won the Oscar for Best Picture in 1987. And then he produced Falling Down with Michael Douglas, and The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, and The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino, and Seven with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, and a little movie called Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I thought, well, if he could win the Academy Award, I mean, I used to smoke joints with that guy, okay? They took me on a vacation to Acapulco, which changed my whole life, because here I am living in Acapulco most of my time these days. And why am I a writer? I've been inspired by my interactions with my connections with these great people. And it's not like any of them ever sat me down and said, okay, you are going to be a great writer. Believe me, they didn't say that. But I sat there and I listened to them. And Frank Mccourt would say, you have to write what you know. And what do you really know except your own life?
I just want to jump in there, everybody. I'm going on 100 journeys in my head here, Clint, as you're talking. My mind is multidimensional, they tell me. And there's so many things I just want to throw back at you before we get going further in the story. First of all, we talk about Tony Robbins. It's funny, man. I go out and when I do teaching and things in my business, you're right. There's even my daughter who's 24. I mentioned Tony and who. But I still have on my in my room, tacked up on the wall, a bandana which is tied in a knot, which has the ashes from my firewalk. So wow. This is part of the book, everybody. This is why I believe that the universe connects people by their stories. I believe, everybody, that Clint, when he said he was driving that cab, that was his beginning of his hero's journey, where he said, I don't want any more of this pain. I got to answer that call to adventure, go do something. that my call to adventure was in 2009. It's funny, dude, you said that. I was actually seeing Tony Robbins, and I did the fire walk. I did it here in Simon Fraser University. We had 3,000 people in a dome, and then we went out, and there was something like 30 fire pits. Cool moss, cool moss. Why I'm saying those things is I'm reading your book and I'm going like, shit, I'm reliving my story. And that's why the book really caught my attention, because it sent me back in time and reminded me that I was always greatness. I just had these beliefs that I was. And then when Tony did that, I put that on my vision board. I said, if I can do that. But here's the thing about Tony. I want to finish about Tony on this, that I only found him because I was seeking, because I was broken, because there's something missing. And around about 2009, as I wrote about, we had 3 events in our life. One was a loss of a C-level job for me. The other one was a Ponzi scheme where we woke up one morning with 3 kids. We had nothing. And I didn't tell anyone, Clint. That's the thing you said about the taxi. My wife and I have everything, the homes, I'm a CEO, she's a manager of a bank. And we wake up one day and find that everything's gone. We don't tell our kids. We don't tell our parents. People started turning against us because we started behaving different. I'm going like, so what do? I decide to go hang a shingle for a couple of years as a chief operating officer through a buddy of mine at his company. And I say, can you give me some money? Because I want to go see this guy, Tony. And that's part of the journey that started for me. So I want to do something fun again with you here, because we're talking about the book. I'm going to share the screen. Just stand by for a minute. I'm going to bring something on here. Can you see that there?
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna play a little clip from this book, everybody, and then we're gonna get Clint to talk about it. Whoops. All right, here we go.
It was the only acting job I ever got hired and paid for in Hollywood. George H.W. Bush. These days, my mom is very proud every time she talks about my fine Wharton education and the things I learned in the Ivy League about how to be successful. I learned a lot of stuff, enough to fill a whole book. That book is called What They Teach You at the Wharton Business School. I've already gone over a few of the key lessons about how to be successful in business, but when I think about what it was that actually made the biggest difference, I know it was that night after New Year's Eve when I decided I had to change. I had been terrified I would be unable to dig myself out of the ditch that had become my life. With a resume containing only one line item, yellow cab company. But with all the personal development seminars and the experiences provided to me by Justin Sterling and Tony Robbins and Paul Roth in his life transformation seminar, I could afford to quit driving a taxi, and in very short order, I met Allison. I told my dad about her, and he asked, "Does she know you used to be a taxi driver?" It had only been a couple of weeks since I quit. I said, "No, she doesn't." He said, "Good. Don't
All right.
Tell it. Don't tell it. That's what he said.
As everybody, I put that up for a reason, because it was mind blowing for me. Here's the thing. That's how this book is written. And this is not a commercial for your book, dude, because I don't do that. This is a book that can help people. The thing about the book is you told the story about Bush, and most people with ego would go on and talk about how they met George Bush and how great they'd pump it up. But did you notice that what Clint did was he went straight to what was going on in his life, and he connected that to that story. I love it. The book is full of that, everybody. You got to get it. You got to read it. You got to rate it. So I'm going to give it back to you, Clint. Let's talk about something in the book. There was several events in your book. I love some of the stories about your adversity. I think there were some things about alcohol and relationships and whatnot. What do you say to people who pick this book up and go, I can't do that. I can't be like that, who don't get the fact that it's not about trying to hang out with people that are better than you to make yourself feel a sense of self-worth. It's really about surrounding yourself by people who know people so that you can develop and get your story out there. What do you say to people who are stuck?
They're stuck on the celebrity aspect of it, or
the celebrity aspect.
Yeah, there's kind of like a anti-celebrity movement going on in the world. And, I get it. But at the same time, you look at the names on the front of my book and you're going to be interested in what do I have to say about all those people whom I have personally met and have photographs with in the book? And this book is not, it's not really about them, although I ask them, most of them, a question that I've been asking. Like I asked George Bush, what's the most important thing you ever learned? And I get kickback on the fact that some people don't like the politics of George Bush, and therefore nothing he has to say is worth listening to. Or the same thing about Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton or Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Those are the 5 presidents of the United States whom I have personally met, and I have photos with all of them. And what I say to that is, great, your politics are what your politics are. Maybe these people are terrible people. Maybe you think they're awesome people. But whatever the case may be, these are historical people. And you and I are never going to be historical, but they are. They managed to work their way up to the top, and they got to have something that's worth listening to. And I'm not asking them about, how do you make it in politics? I ask them the most important question that I know to ask, and that is, what's the most important thing you ever learned? See, because learning is everything in life. That's what we're here to do. That's how you better yourself as a person, is you learn. So what I've done is I've found the most outstanding people in the world. I've put myself face to face with them and asked them this question: what's the most important thing you ever learned? Now with George Bush, you'll see the photograph of me and George Bush, and on his necktie, he's got little parachute jumpers on the tie. The guy loved to jump out of airplanes. That was his thing. And I said, sir, what's the most important thing you ever learned? He said, well, young man, that's a very big question, but I'd have to say, you have to keep doing the things you love in this life. See, now, what does that have to do with politics? Nothing. That's just a smart man who's like 75, 80 years old, giving a few words of wisdom to a young man. And that's what I got from most of these people. And some of them, I didn't get that. Some of them, I just learned from the situation, like with Joe Biden. I never got to ask him the question, but it was about, the whole situation with Joe Biden was about showing up. When I first, see, it goes back to my fraternity brother, Chris Carrera, the guy who made $1 gazillion, he threw a big fundraiser party for the fraternity when I was still a taxi driver, and I couldn't go. I couldn't show up. My dad said, I'll send you a ticket. I'll pay for the whole thing. You got to go. I said, Dad, I can't go. These guys are all millionaires. I'm a cab driver. They're going to ask me, how's it going? What are you up to? What am I going to say? I couldn't show up. And you see, this is the thing. When you don't hear from people, this is something that I've learned. And I haven't said this before on any podcasts or interviews. When somebody disappears, it's not because they don't like you. It's because their life sucks. That's why they disappear.
Yeah.
When you don't hear from a person, you need to reach out and see what you can do, because they're not showing up because they're embarrassed about what's going on. That's what it's really all about. And that's what I learned ultimately from Joe Biden, because 9 years later, there was another party with Joe Biden, and I was able to show up for that one because I had already become somebody.
Wow, man. I mean, my heart's growing, dude, to like the Grinch Who Stole Christmas in that scene 3 times just because I love you and your story. But what you said there, I went on another journey. I mean, I talk about everybody, when you read the book, like the George Bush thing you just heard about that little crest, when I read that, it's a nugget, it's wisdom, it's something I didn't know. But for the first time, after all the media clips I saw of George, I went, the guy's real. I mean, there's something real. I love how you asked everybody in your book about what's the most important thing you learned, Clint. I think to me in itself, that's worth this book alone, because there's just so much wisdom. I want to talk for a minute with you, and I never shared this before in this way, but about showing up. In 2000, well, my childhood story, all that I talk about a lot, but in 2018, at the height of my game, I fell and had a brain injury and ended up, well, talk about not showing up. I was literally broken, running out of money, ruminating, slipping into depression, staying a year in my home doing nothing. But I actually ended up applying to Costco, Starbucks, Home Depot for work, because my doc said, get your ass out there because you're going to slip further. And I walked into Costco and was a night stalker for 2 years. I put a cap on, I grew a beard, and I didn't want anybody to know who I was. But what was interesting is all of my pals and my network, which are usually the business world, They all disappeared. And instead of reaching out to people to stay connected, I disappeared. I wasn't willing to show up because I was kind of embarrassed. What would they think of me? But it was through that moment, it was another call to adventure for me. It was like, I got to stop that. I got to find a way to believe myself. I think the biggest thing I'm learning about you and everybody, this is a teaching moment, is what Clint said. This man has gone and met 5 presidents and all these people. That doesn't mean that you're not as good as him, but dude, think about this. The fact that he believes in himself this much, he believes he's confident enough that he can show up and he can sit across from anybody at a dinner. He can reach out to a president and say, hey, I'm Clint. I want to talk to you. That is that's really what it's all about. It's like we can wake up in the morning, feel love for ourselves. You can literally do what this guy, Clint Arthur, does. You can reach out and be in service to anybody. And I really couldn't do that for most of my life, Clint. And the last part of the story is it wasn't until I actually I wrote my book in Hollywood called, and we did Moving America Forward. And I remember going down there with Anna, never done a Hollywood taping, and I was scared. But after I found the courage to do that, I went, wait a minute, I'm just telling my story, and they're not better than me. I'm worthy. And then the phone was ringing about opportunities and things. Even to this day, I still have that reptilian brain say, are you good enough? But this is my last thing. I know I'm going on a rant here for a reason because you touched on this, but it's like Tony says, repetition's the mother of skill. The more you show up, everybody, the more you teach your brain, you lay down new thought patterns that I'm good enough, I'm good enough, I'm good enough, instead of I'm not good enough, which is what we heard most of the time growing up. And that is why this book is such a gift to anybody who has a story to tell. So I'm going to give it back to you, Clint. And there's a whole world that's behind everything you've done. I think you teach people certain things, why people want to work with you. Can you talk about that for a bit?
I'm thinking about people disappearing and not showing up. And, these days you walk around New York City and you're like, well, where is everybody? You go to the airport and where is everybody? I'm telling you, because I've been to a lot of empty airports in the last couple of months. And you know what's going on, Tom, is that the whole world is not showing up because people are not happy about themselves. And I'm telling you, this is what they want. They want everybody to disappear, literally and physically. But the literal part is the first step before the physical part. You can't give in to what they want. They want you to disappear. They want you to not show up. And I'm telling you, Woody Allen says it. It's in my book. There's a picture of me with Woody Allen. Say what you want about the guy. He's 100% right about this. 80% of life is about showing up. You got to show up. If you don't show up, you lose automatically. And this is one of the big lessons in the book. Now, what is this really all about? It's showing up bigger, showing up more. Yeah. The tendency of life is to want to not show up because you're not happy about working in Costco or whatever you're doing. And you know what? That's all fine and good. But there was a point in my life when I was driving the taxi, and when I quit driving the taxi, like when I was so scared, it wasn't when I quit driving the taxi, it was when I quit writing. When I quit writing the second time, it was because I was so desperate to just have a normal life. I was trying to be a movie star and a filmmaker and win an Academy Award. But when I got out of it, it was because I just was desperate to want to have a normal life. Because to me, that's probably the most courageous thing of anything, is to just say, I want to have a wife. I want to make some money. I want to own a home. Those are the things that I wanted. And they don't want you to live. They don't want you to show up. They don't want you to be proud of what you're doing. And that's what you need to do. And as far as telling your story, if I don't know your story, I don't know you. See, Tom, I know your story. You're a different class of podcast host than most of them, because most of them don't tell me their story. They're just names on a list. With a lot of people, those would be numbers on a list of vendors that you can select from, whoever has the medium price or the low price or whatever your criteria are. But when I know your story, That's when I know you. That's when you become a person. And the key here is that people buy people.
That's right.
That's what people buy. So if you really want, if you're an author, speaker, coach, expert of any kind, you really want to make yourself into a person in the eyes of your prospects who you're trying to help. And this whole thing about my story, well, is my story good enough? Well, that's what speakers do. Speakers tell stories, and the only separation between you and any other speaker is your stories. Anybody else can tell the same facts, information, instructions, whatever, which nobody cares anything about. The only thing people want is they want to be entertained by stories. And if you can educate them in the process, then that's the bonus. And your responsibility is to get good at telling your stories. See, I've been telling my stories now for quite a long time, and that's why I've developed some goodness at telling my story. But I also have worked hard as a speaker. I became a speaker because I'm a writer, and I wanted to sell more books. And how do you sell more books? Well, a great way to sell more books is to get on stages and talk to people. But what happened is that it awakened this passion in me to want to be a performer. And when I was growing up in New York City, I went to PS 40. I went to junior high school number 104. I mean, how much more normal could a person be, right?
Yeah.
And in my 8th grade class at junior high school 104, there were 2 guys who were also in plays. I got cast as the lead as Tony in West Side Story. Then there was the drama club, and they did a play called Hair. And in the lead of that play was a kid named Robert Downey Jr. Imagine that. And he and I were both the stars of the plays. So we became friends. We went to see a movie that his father directed. Robert Downey Sr. was a movie director. It was called Putney Swope. I don't really remember anything about the movie. But after the movie, we went to go buy a falafel sandwich in Greenwich Village. And on the store, he ducks into a candy store. I'll be right back. Comes out, opens up a pack of Marlboro Reds, pulls out one. Then he holds up the pack of cigarettes next to his head and goes, and throws it on a pile of trash. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
And he goes, I just wanted one. And wow. It's fascinating because he had a lot of personal willpower, but willpower is not enough. Everybody knows Robert Downey Jr.'s willpower wasn't enough to keep him out of jail for drugs and other problems that he had. But then when he got out, this is the really fascinating connection with Robert Downey. He gets out of jail and he's lucky to get a job working on a movie as a movie star again. And who's the producer? Some chick named Susan Levine. Who's Susan Levine? Well, my wife's name is Allie, and Allie was the president of a animation and computer graphics production company in Hollywood. They would do, visual effects for big movies. She's worked with every director: Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Jim Cameron. She did Terminator 2. She, when the Terminator turns into liquid, she did that. That was her.
Amazing.
And she had this girl reading the scripts for her and saying why they suck. That's called the development girl. Well, the development girl was Susan Levine, and Susan Levine meets Robert Downey Jr. They get married, and his life goes on a huge rocket ride. Just the way, since I've been with Allie, my dad said, don't tell her you're a taxi driver. Thank God I didn't, because we've been together now for more than 21 years.
Yeah.
And you look at my life before her and since her. I mean, I had a great life before her. I was a bachelor. I lived on a boat. I had no responsibilities other than paying my $482 a month for child support. But I wasn't becoming who I am today, which is really what this is really all about. Who are you? And then the other kid in my junior high school, he was, his name was John Cryer. He did a little television show with a guy named Charlie Sheen. It was called 2.5 Men. He was the other man. He played Conrad in the 9th grade junior high school edition of Bye Bye Birdie. And when I was in 10th grade, I played Conrad in the high school version of Bye Bye Birdie. So look at the 3 guys that we were, all in the plays, all starring in the plays. And when I became a speaker, that awakened, that reawakened something that was in me, that desire to want to be in front of people and perform. And now, you know, that's evolved my technique for writing. And
That's pretty cool. Everybody, there's so much there. One of the things I heard just recently, Clint, you're a master of this, is wisdom. And they said that the difference between, wisdom and knowledge is time. And so everybody, if you're looking for somebody who has walked a path and done something, for example, a maven, when you look at CLINT ARTHUR, what he's done and mastered, his book's all about teaching that. I was thinking also about, the thing about being connected to other people and telling stories. I want to know what you think about this, but they say when you tell your story, you get to, write the next chapter and finish the story your way. I also learned through some of my own development that we're connected by, we learn better. We're wired to hear stories, not facts and figures. And I belong to a Toastmasters speaking club. And it's funny, Clint, and when I did my TED Talk, the audience was full of 1,000 people, and many of them were young. And in my Toastmasters group, there's a diversity, but many of these young people are sitting there. They're going to run the world. They have ideas, they have seeds, they have thoughts, and they want to tell their stories. They're intimidated. They don't feel the courage. The only reason I tell my story and I can live with myself telling it is because I found a deep personal passion to do something with it. So I have a tribe that I'm trying to reach. I have a lot of work to do to figure out how to do it, Clint. But my story's not for everyone. And if I'm telling my story and people can't connect, it doesn't matter. They say, Oprah says it, I read somewhere Oprah says it's maybe 90%. I think research says 80% of people in the world have some form of past trauma. So I'm basically out there to tell my story to the 90%. But here's the thing, Clint. When I grew up, I thought I was like the 10% because nobody else told their story. They covered up their adversity. When you talk about Downey and all these people, all we see, George Bush, is the great little snippets in the media. But when you really tear down that and you look behind it, they're all train wrecks. They all have adversity. They all have learnings. And that's really what we need. And, so for the next generations, everybody, this is an art. What you saw Clint do here, and when you read his book, this is an art that we've got to start doing. I think we can change the world and connect by taking this whole storytelling narrative to a very different level with children and youth who are coming up that just don't know anything about it. Hey, Clint, as we go to wrap up, I want to ask you, in all the interviews, or maybe not a fair question, you asked that question, what's the most important thing you've learned? What's the most important thing you've learned?
I usually say that who you are is more important than what you actually do or sell. And that's been the big lesson of my business career. But I also, it's an evolution to the answer to that question, because, who you are means who you really are inside. See, it's not just the way you're perceived. The way you're perceived by your prospects is who you are in their eyes. But then there's the second, more deeper level of who you are, which is who you really are as a person. What are you really made of? And that's what this is all about. This is not about the houses,
that's
although
cool.
I have many. It's not about the cars. It's not about staying in the best hotel in Venice, Italy for 2 weeks and writing the book. It's about what happens to you when you do that, what you become. This is all about who you are and who you become in the process of living this life. It's about deepening your character. It's about learning. It's about having the confidence to do my 3 words. I see you have your 3 words. I have my 3 words. My 3 words are freedom, power, and adventure.
Love it.
My words are about having the freedom to do anything I want, the power to make it happen, and living a life full of adventure, which I have done, as you'll see in the pages of my book. And that's who I am. And that's what life is really all about.
Wow. Everybody, teaching moment, just come back, watch that part of the show over and over. And I got to tell you, Clint, publicly here on the show, you got what I want. I look at telling my story is one thing, but I've told my wife, she's Italian, we've dreamed about living a lifestyle. And, her idea, I'm a home chef. So her idea of going to Italy is lying on, in a villa where I serve her martinis and I cook for her. And I'm going like, I'm okay with that. But I want what I want, and I have dreams, and I think it was Tony. You and I have a shared mentor there. Who I remember seeing something that so that we're remembered by what we do in private, not in public. I want people to understand what I do in private, but what I do in public doesn't matter. And I think that's exactly where you and I do connect. I want to do something here to honor you as we go to wrap up. So I'm going to single screen me for a minute. He's probably saying, "What are you doing?" Putting the spotlight on you. Well, of course. So behind me, Clint, you see this image. It's actually a challenge coin. And challenge coins were created in World War II. I had this coin minted. When I started my show, it was simply because I wanted a place for people to come tell their stories. Challenge coins today are carried around the world to commit to community. So they're used by first responders. My father was in AA, and they had these type of coins. If you're in the military, you carry it in your pocket. And, that was just for camaraderie. So, oh my goodness, look at that. Somebody who gets it. Awesome. I love that. You know what? I got to get one of those. So my coin, that is amazing, man. Another amazing. So on the back of the coin, they're hand minted and crafted in the US. Yeah. Wow. That's a beauty. That is a
That's
beauty.
my fraternity on the back.
That is totally. You just upped my show. Now I'm going to bring my coin and show it because I'm just looking at everybody. That's awesome. So Clint, the back of the coin is actually a beautifully narrated hero's journey by Joe Campbell. And so Purpose Action Life is really the narrative of the show. So you're going to get this. I induct you into the Quiet Warrior Tribe. These are carried across 17 countries. Less than 40 a year go out, and not everybody can get on the show because they won't park the ego. But I love you, man, and what you did. And I have 4 words here. Just hold on. As you're speaking, I write these down. I don't prescript them. 4 leadership words. First one is storyteller. Second is egoless. Third is humility. And fourth is 2 words, joy and fun. That's what you bring. I mean, when you listen to your book and how you narrate it, you're really a fun guy. And I think I just want to be around people like that and know that that is the way to mental health, smiling and laughing and enjoying life. So congratulations. Welcome to the tribe. And we'll talk again. Last word goes to you, how people can get a hold of the book and yourself.
The book is on Amazon. You got to type in Wisdom of the Men, Clint Arthur. That's the way to find it. If you want to find me, Clint with 3Ts.com. Why 3 Ts? One of my students / clients is a name scientist. She said, Clint, I wish you had another T on the end of your name because the T's always end up on top. And I couldn't get Clint with 2Ts.com, but I could get Clint with 3Ts.com. So that's how you find me, Clint with 3Ts.com.
Well, there's a nugget. T for Tom. Awesome. Everybody live that true life with purpose. Find that passion like you hear from Clint. Take action and live the life that you deserve and desire.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca